autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting child development through playful interactions.
Well, we have a special treat today at Affect Autism. We have Dr. Gil Tippie. We've had him on before, but it's been a long time. Welcome, Dr. Tippie.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. I'm really excited.
Yes, I'm excited to have you too, because we're talking about a brand new project that we haven't discussed at Affect Autism. Dr. Gil Tippie used to be the clinical director at the Rebecca School in Manhattan, a DIR floor time school, developmental individual differences, relationship-based school. Started with Dr. Stanley Greenspan, and he is a clinical consultant to Oakwood Academy in Canada, the only DIR school in Canada. And he helped start Shrub Oak Academy. I believe that's the last podcast we did, which was quite a while ago. And that is in upstate New York, a residential school that has all kinds of outdoor activities and wonderful opportunities. And I'll put a link to all these things in the blog post for today's podcast. But what we're focusing on today is your new project, because you are now in California.
I am, and so happy to be here. You have no idea.
Excellent.
I was in Toronto last week and got snowed in. What a lovely reminder of why it is that I love Northern California.
Why you're happy to be off Long Island? Because I heard they had quite the weather last week or a few days ago.
Well, I never loved Long Island anyways, I have to say. I lived there for a lot of years, never loved it. Grew up in Northern New Jersey, though, and I did love Northern New Jersey, but I am sick and tired of the freezing cold weather and the snow and all of that stuff, so Northern California suits me just fine, thank you.
Excellent.
So, really happy to be here. And it also relates directly to my my current project, which is a farming project. So having a place where we can have year-round farming and year-round activities really makes sense.
Perfect. Well, I learned something new about you today. I learned why you don't have a Long Island accent, because you grew up in Northern New Jersey, not in Manhattan, New York area.
Well, you can have a horrible accent growing up in New Jersey. Horrible accent. But I didn't have one because when I actually learned to speak in Boston, Massachusetts, or a little suburb right outside of Boston. And I had a very, very strong Massachusetts accent. And when my family moved to New Jersey, the speech and language pathologist in my school thought that I had a speech impediment because I had a Boston accent. So
because you said, I'm going to go park my car in the parking lot.
Park my car, exactly. And so I had to go to a speech and language pathologist simply to get rid of my Boston accent. And when my mother discovered that I was going to the speech pathologist, because back in those days you could just take kids out of class and do whatever you wanted with them, she put an end to that. But anyways, so I did learn to not speak with a Boston accent. So.
Okay, well, let's get on to the topic at hand today. This is Dr. Tippie's latest project, Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance. And let's look here at your mission statement, and then I'll let you take it away and tell us about it. The mission is to create an appropriate developmental space to help members of the autism spectrum disorder community bring their full value to society on small family-owned organic farms in economically challenged communities, while providing nutritious foods in food deserts. With the support of at-risk teens and young adults, Dirty Hands will foster appropriate developmental growth while supporting each individual as they explore their thoughts, feelings, interests, and desires at their own pace. This sounds very floor time.
Well, it is floor time. It's only floor time. That's all that we're doing. And I really love that you got the mission statement up there. We spent an awful lot of time on that mission statement. It packs a ton of information in there. And since you've read it now, I don't have to do the podcast. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Well, let's unpack everything that's in there. Let me know if you want me to throw it back up.
No, I got it. So Dirty Hands Developmental was really a reaction to the fact that there aren't great transition services from my perspective, from the DIR floor time perspective, available to people after their secondary education. So in the United States, you go through high school. Very often you get to stay until 21 or 22 if you have a developmental challenge, if you're lucky 22 at some states. At 22, all of a sudden you find yourself with very little support. There are transition programs. I don't mean to say that there aren't, but I looked at how they were operating and I was not enthusiastic about it. They certainly weren't able to do the things that a developmental individual difference relationship-based DIR floor time program would call for. So Dirty Hands Developmental is at least in part a reaction to that. So it comes from the developmental perspective, and for me, that's DIR floor time. Frankly, as those of you who've sat in on talks with me, Daria, you know, I don't actually care that much about what your developmental model is, so long as you're thinking developmentally. I happen to think in the one that Stanley Greenspan created, and I think that way. But if you think developmentally, all you really have to do is think, okay, first a child does this thing, then they do 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 this thing. That's a developmental model, and the developmental levels build on each other. It isn't necessarily direct, and sometimes people go up and go down. We all drop developmentally when we're frustrated, sad, hungry, all those other things. But it's a developmental model, and people make progress. For me, and the way that I think about our young adults, the educational system, the way it is currently set up, at least in the United States, and I think in many other Western countries, and really in countries around the world, if you take a look at educational systems, is that we bring students in and then we exit them somewhere around 18 with the notion that they're going to go on to higher education of some sort, or they'll go on into the world of work and career. And our students are not necessarily on that time scale. That the schools were created for students who were going to move along developmentally in a more neurotypical way, and not necessarily in a way that our students move. So I've done this a million times, so let me show it to you again. If this is a graph and this line is typical development, and this is how our schools are set up, right? 1 year of growth, age equals 1 year of growth, and so slowly but surely you get to 18 and you're ready to leave the school system. Our students might be developing at this line, so that 1 year of growth isn't 1 year of age isn't necessarily 1 year of development, and maybe they're not going to actually get out to where they would be able to leave the school system until way out here. So this is a response to the notion that you don't just drop off the school system at 22 and then suddenly, okay, I'm ready, I'm going off into the world of work or world of college, wherever it is that I'm going, if you have a developmental challenge. The good news is that there is plenty of time to continue to work on developmental challenges. And one of the brilliant things that I thought Dr. Greenspan actually said was that having a developmental challenge means that the window stays open, that you can continue to work. So while it may require some resources from our society up front, in the long run, getting someone to where they are fully functioning and independent individuals, living the lives that they wanted to live from the pieces that grew within them, is much more cost effective and much more valuable to the society than not actually supporting them through their whole development and then getting them to a place where we're still in a position where individuals need a tremendous amount of support. So this is that reaction. We're going to create a developmental transition type of service. So that was the first reaction. So I want a DIR program. The second reaction is that we want to be socially responsible. It's really important that we do socially meaningful work when we're doing work. It's important to the individuals who are working, the staff. It's important to the society, but it's also important to the consumers that the work be meaningful. So that's one of the reasons that we've chosen to support the organic farming community and small farms in general. So let me tell you about that aspect of the model, and then we can talk more about it. farmers, small farmers in general, are the people who are tending the earth and making sure that the earth stays fertile and making sure that we continue to be able to raise crops. Organic farmers are particularly attuned to that. They want the dirt to be able to continue to grow crops. They want to not pollute. They want to create healthful and nutritious foods for people. And small farmers in general are actually better at that than the large corporate farms that actually produce a tremendous, or eat up most of our land and produce a lot of our food. So the problem is that small farmers are under assault everywhere, that financially they are in terrible shape. It is very difficult to make a living as a small farmer, even if your family has been farmers for generations and generations and generations. People are losing their lands. They're losing their property to mortgage. They have had to spend more and more money in order to just get their product to the table. So they're in terrible shape. The average organic farmer is a small farmer. It's a small family farm. They make very little profit. They work unusually long hours, and they are under pressure and going out of business as well. That's not entirely true everywhere. There are some really great organic farming communities that make really great money. There's a market gardener who is sort of the guru of things in Canada, Jean-Martin Fortier. But mostly organic farmers are small families that are really struggling. Here in Sonoma County, we have tons of organic farmers and tons of organic markets, but the farmers can't actually get there. So part of what we wanted to do, in addition to doing a super high intensity developmental program for people to continue their educations after their secondary education, we also wanted to do it in the context of helping some group that needed real help, and organic farmers are one of them. So our model takes place on an already established organic farm, a small family farm that needs support. What the farm is getting from the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance is rent. We are renting space on their farm. And what we are doing is providing an educational setting, essentially, for continued developmental growth on that organic farm. And we are giving them rent. And we are saying to the farmer, give us this outbuilding. We need a whiteboard. We need some other stuff. We're going to continue to offer DIR floor time support, OT, PT, speech and language, mental health, and other needed services on your space. In return, you're going to get rent, and we may, and we hope, we may be able to offer you work on your farm. Every day, we'll come together as a group. We'll do really great developmental work. We'll do all of the work about planning and the ability to think abstractly and moving up developmentally amongst a diverse group of people with wide neurodiverse profiles. We'll do that in the context of having really great clinical support. And we may, if you need, let's say you need your beet field weeded and you don't bring a tractor onto it because that destroys the tilth of the land, that hurts the land itself. So you really weed everything by hand. We may actually get out to weed your beet field. It is possible. We may not. We may never get outside to weed your beet field, because the truth is, in a DIR model, I don't actually care if the beets get weeded. What I care is that the process of working through how are we going to make decisions about what our actions are going to be today is the actual process. So what we get from the farmer, in addition to the space, is we get a proportion of their produce. Maybe it'll even be their ugly produce. They may be putting together community-supported agriculture baskets, which is how many organic farms make their living. Community-supported agriculture, for those of you who don't know, is when a farmer takes a subscription from somebody who really wants great organic vegetables coming to them weekly. And they pay up front, which helps the farmer. The farmer then makes available to them a box every week with whatever's coming out of the field that week. And that's how organic farms are sort of trying to keep alive. So we're going to take part of the produce that comes out of the field, I think probably the ugly produce, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with the notion of ugly produce, but it's the stuff that people go, I'm not going to buy that at a farmer's market, but it's actually just as nutritious and, perfectly well, but it's an odd shaped carrot or something, right? And we're going to take that produce and we're going to be the group that distributes that to our next group of people. So first, we're doing DIR floor time. Second, we're helping the community in the form of helping the organic farmers. Third, we're going to help people with nutritional challenges. So organic food generally does not get to people with dire nutritional challenges. Generally, it gets to people with the financial wherewithal to buy organic foods. And that's fine with me. I mean, that's wonderful. But the people surrounding these farms here in Sonoma County, let's imagine that the people who are actually hired to pick the foods on the larger farms or to work in the vineyards that are surrounding me where I sit here today, or work in the apple orchards or any of the places here, it is possible that those individuals can't actually buy the organic foods. In addition, they can't even get to a grocery store because they're in a food desert. So the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, and I'm sure departments of agriculture around the world have definitions for this, but the USDA says that a food desert is defined by not being able to get to a place where you could get fresh produce and other healthy foods easily. And usually that's considered to be more than a mile away from one of those spots. So here, even in beautiful Sonoma County, which has tremendous foods, people are in a food desert. And a lot of those people are people who don't own a car, can't get to other places. And I used to live in Santa Rosa. I now live in Sebastopol. In Santa Rosa, there was a gas station near my house where people got most of their nutritional needs met at the little Quickie Mart. There was a place where you could buy tacos and a couple of other things, and then simple other prepared foods. And there was a population living very nearby that was using that as their grocery store. And that's what they mean by a food desert, that you can't actually get foods which are healthful. I have a lot of discussion that I could talk about with food justice, food equity, but we won't talk about it here. But those are the issues that we're attempting to address. So our folks who are receiving services through the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance are going to be supporting a farm, getting good developmental services for themselves, including transition services, which will allow them to make the decision to go on in the world of work or the world of higher education, and are also now supporting people in real nutritional need in the community. And the way we're going to do that is we will take a storefront in an economic development zone. Economic development monies in the United States come from the federal government, get spread out to the state distributes them to the counties make decisions about what to designate as an economic development zone, meaning a place where there is a real challenge for businesses. The way Sonoma County decided to distribute that is a political issue that I'm not going to get into right now. But what we'll be doing is going into a community that has real challenges and renting a storefront and using that as our space where we can start to distribute food. Now, the reason we won't do it through a farmer's market is because there's really good research that says that the people who are in nutritional need will not go to a farmer's market. A, they can't get there because there's no public trans to it. And B, they don't feel comfortable there. They might not speak the language. They might stand out as people of color in a place where they normally don't go. There are real social challenges for people to go to farmers markets if they're not of a certain social class or socioeconomic class. It's a real class issue. So we're going to distribute foods in places where you can get to them, and distribute them in an economic development zone that really needs our presence anyways. Along with that, when we distribute the foods, what we're going to do is have the local community college. We have a really great community college system here in California. I don't know what the general concept is in Canada, but here, if you need a cheaper way to go to college in order to get your basics met and then go on to the rest of the academic world, very often that's done through a really robust and well-funded and great community college, junior college system. So we're going to go to our local community college, bring a nutritionist in, and the nutritionist, on the days when we distribute food to people, is going to give cooking classes, which our individuals will participate in. And the reason we want to do that is, A, it's tremendous for our consumers, but B, imagine that, this is Sonoma County. Kale is all the thing, right? So there's tons of kale. And imagine that we're distributing kale, and maybe that isn't a traditional ingredient in your culture, and you're receiving this basket of food. So the nutritionist is going to take recipes, adapt them culturally to the ingredients that are available, and show people how to use them, nutritious foods in general. There's still a lot of challenges with this idea. Remember that some of these people don't actually have really great access to good cooking facilities, may not have access to stoves. I mean, there are a lot of issues, but we're going to try to tackle it as best we can. So that's the next part, supporting an economic development zone, a community that's really depressed and having challenges economically, and trying to offer that support. You can see that the whole thing that we're aiming for is to flip the paradigm on autism services. And generally the paradigm, and I don't mean to be condescending or dismissive in any way when I talk about this, but generally the paradigm is that the autism community says, oh, we're the autism community, we need the society in general to support us. Please come to our aid. We need your money. We need your services. Please support us. And I want to flip that script, because I really now, having worked in the autism community for many years, understand that some of the most talented people I have ever met in the society are actually members of the autism community. And we in the neurotypical community desperately need this group of people to be in our society. And so this whole Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance is designed to flip the script on developmental challenges in general and say, look, you guys need us. We're going to come to the aid of you, the general society, and try to make things better. And we're going to come and solve some of your societal problems, or at least begin to contribute to that. And so that's really the whole general idea. We want people to look at the Dirty Hands Developmental logo, which is a really beautiful logo, which was generously donated to us by Milkshake Studios in Brooklyn. And we want them to look at that and say, hey, we can get, there it is right there, that logo right there. Those are the rolling hills of Sonoma County there. So our notion is that we want people to look at that logo and say, oh, that's the group that's contributing to the benefit of our community, not the group that's walking around looking for general support and needing more support. I actually think that's the way we need to flip this script. So have I touched on all those subject areas in the mission statement? The notion is, of course, that we want people to get to the delivery end, the exit of our system, of our Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance. And I do not see us as a permanent place for people. I think people will enter at the end of their secondary education. They will stay as they move up developmentally. When they reach a developmental point where they make a decision about where they wish to go in the society, whether they're going to go on to the world of work and career, whether they're going to go on to the world of higher education. When they make that decision and we support them in reaching that, they can just leave. So, I'm a really big believer in the notion that healthy birds fly away. And I think the way to help people reach the goals that they want to bloom into the individuals that they were meant to be, is to support them developmentally. There's another reason why you have to work, why Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance came into being. The transition programs that I've seen very often require that the work being done get delivered. So let me explain what I mean by that. So the work of let's say a cupcake bakery, for some reason, as I've traveled around this country, very often I find that part of the transition programs that I've seen very often include a bakery and very often include a cupcake bakery. So it's interesting to me, whether it be San Francisco or New York, it's interesting that very often there's a bakery involved with developmental challenges. Anyway, so when you are at the bakery, the cupcake is going to get made, and it has to go to the individual who's buying the cupcake. And that means that an individual with a challenge is going to get prompted through the steps at the very least, because at the end of the day, there has to be a cupcake sitting there. And it's true of almost every transition service that I've ever seen. At the end of the day, the thing has to be done. I really thought long and hard about how can you create a transition service where at the end of the day, it is not necessary that the individual who's consuming the service, in this case, a person with autism spectrum disorder, that individual does not have to have produced a thing. Because if you're going to work in the DIR floor time model, those of you who know me well know that, this gesture, I don't know, what are we doing next, is part of the deal. And it means that the work is allowing the space, holding space and time for a person, allowing the space to let the individual actually realize that he or she or they have thoughts, and those thoughts are things that you can act on, and that the space to actually take your processing time and actually do what you need to do. And you cannot do that if a cupcake has to be delivered. So I thought so hard about it, and what we came up with is the notion that existing organic farms are already running. They are already producing their produce. There's an unusually redundant sentence, producing produce. But they're creating their thing already, and they're selling it already, right? And they can use financial support. They do always have outbuildings that aren't necessarily being fully utilized. And so we can do the work there and maybe support them, maybe get stuff done on the farm for them, maybe add value in that particular way, during which we would be delivering occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language pathology, mental health services, and any other service they need in addition to the DIR floor time support in the context of meaningful work on the farm. But maybe it wouldn't, and it wouldn't matter because the farmer would have already had production plans which would allow them to put out the stuff. So that's one of the reasons why we chose this group. Secondly was they were in tremendous need. Small farmers are winking out all over the country, and it's a real challenge. But third, and this matters a great deal to people west of the Mississippi in the United States, maybe not as much to people east of the Mississippi. So in the Western United States, there's a strong acknowledgement and a strong movement to realize that toxicity in our foods and toxicity in our environment seems to correlate in some way with autism spectrum challenges and the prevalence of them. And so organic farms are one of the few places where we in our society are actively attempting not to be toxic. Almost everywhere else, the exposure to environmental toxins is ubiquitous. You cannot avoid them. I was at a conference a few years ago, and a good friend of mine was presenting, and he was presenting on toxicity in the environment. And I asked him, where is it safe? He said, well, nowhere really. Maybe the top of a mountain or next to the ocean would be the best you could do. But almost everywhere now is polluted and toxic. So we chose organic farms as this one safe place where you could have a guarantee that nobody was ever going to drive by and spray pesticides on you. You know that people are exposed to pesticides all the time. The people who are picking our foods get exposed regularly. Our children in schools get exposed to herbicides in the grass in the play yard. So there's, these really powerful toxins everywhere. So we chose organic farms. That was another reason for it. I think I want to just put a pause on it. And I've been rambling like crazy. So let me ask if there's anything you want to ask. That would be enlightening while I take a sip. Hold on.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful project that I can't wait to see how it turns out and meet with you again in a few months and see how it's progressing. I do have some questions, and I imagine the listeners might as well. What will the day-to-day look like, and how do these young adults on the spectrum, or will you have to be diagnosed with autism to be a part of this? And if so, or if not, how do you become a part of it? Is there a cost? And then what will daily life look like? Because I think I read somewhere that there will be rooming situations with community. So maybe if you can just get in maybe more of the logistics of what's this going to look like and how is it going to work?
Well, so funding streams are different in every state in this union. Self-directed money is available to people, or is theoretically available to people who have developmental challenges after their secondary educations. Whether it's actually available or not is a matter of state-by-state funding in the United States. So here's what it looks like in general. You get a certain amount of money, which allows you to continue your support, whether that be clinical support. Because we're coming from the DIR floor time perspective, we think you're going to continue to need clinical support in order to continue to develop, whether that be mental health support, whether that just be other types of support in the community. So there's money for that. And then there's also money for you to put together your housing and your living situation. And states vary wildly on that. And it's really criminal in some states. Some states, very affluent states in the Northeast, I'm not going to go around calling out states because that'll probably not be in my best interest in the long run, but some very wealthy states in the Northeast say that there's a certain amount of self-directed money available and that you should be able to get that, and then it's not funded in any way, so there is actually zero monies. And some other states do really quite well with that. So it will depend upon that funding stream partially. And honestly, the costs of the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance are low, right? Deliberately designed to have no overhead, zero overhead, own nothing. So the place literally, all of these, wherever they might be in the country, will own zero because they are using other people's farms. The overhead is rent. The rents are modest, and the reason the rents are modest is because the actual annual income of an organic farmer is, if I told you the national numbers, you would laugh out loud. They're way below the poverty level in the United States. So it's really horrible to imagine. So very little support goes a long, long way. These are not people, small family farms are not people who are attempting to get rich. What they're attempting to do is do good, honest work, provide really helpful things for people, and do good work on the earth. And that's what they're trying to do. So the cost in the overhead is very low. Really, the salaries are probably the most expensive thing. The floor timers have to be trained. They have to be great. They can't be minor leaguers. They have to be people who can work in the context of a open environment and do really great developmental supportive work. The occupational therapist has to be a person who has great sensory integration training. Those people, I was surprised when I read the national statistics about what occupational therapists make. Having spent a lot of my time in New York City and now being fairly close to San Francisco, I had this really high notion of what occupational therapists get paid and physical therapists, they actually make much less money than I thought they did nationally. So that being said, they're still an expensive part of it, and so are the other clinicians. But with very small numbers, with 8 people at a site, with 8 individuals with developmental challenges at an individual place, it's extremely cost effective. So the cost is comparatively low and available. And it will shift depending on where we are in the country. It just does. I mean, Sonoma County is one of the most expensive places in the country to live. New York City, obviously, is one of the most expensive places to live in the country. But when I presented this in Kentucky, and a woman already had the facility to do it and grabbed it and took it and started running with it right away, it was not in one of those very challenging places. And so her costs are tremendously much lower. So it really will depend on where it is.
Do you need a diagnosis?
Do you need a diagnosis? No. Well,
for?
You probably know better than most people, Daria, that I don't care about diagnosis one iota.
Even though you are a clinical psychologist.
I am a clinical psychologist, and I get to, I have in the past gotten to use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, but I really broke with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual when they revised the autism diagnosis and haven't really used it at all since then. I don't actually care about diagnosis. What I care about is, do you come with a developmental challenge? Has that developmental challenge stopped you from being able to make the progress that you have wanted to make in your life? And will a developmental way of working with you, like the one that I'm proposing, will that be of benefit to you? And if that's the case, then you're in. And, we're a not-for-profit, and so actually the cost of things can slide, and there is charitable support, or there will be charitable support for people to come as well. So diagnosis and costs are not the issue. When I proposed this, and I've done it a couple times at the United States Autism Association, formerly United States Autism and Asperger's Association, people always come out of the audience and say, I have the farm right now, I have the space, we're ready to do it, let's go. This is what we've been looking for, and this is what we want to do. So people who own space want to give it. I've already been approached here in Sonoma County by people who want to give me farms, which is not actually what I'm aiming for, because I'm not aiming, as much as I love farming, and as much as I would love to farm, I'm not the farming genius in my family. My son is the farming genius in our family, and he is already the farmer at Shrub Oak International School in Westchester County. So what I'm trying to do is support already existing organic farms, and those people are actually asking, when are you guys going to be ready? We really need your support. So diagnosis and money we've talked about. What else?
And then what will it look like? Will it be they live at home with their parents or in some other setting, and they come to you for the day and then they go back to their setting? Or are you providing residence for them?
Well, so right now here, we are only going to start with providing a day program. So whatever your housing is, that's your housing. For instance, we have a really famous housing group here in Sonoma County that would be able to have access to the day services, which are sort of lacking. I don't mean to say that we don't have day services here in Sonoma County. We do. We don't have developmental day services being offered in the way that I'm proposing. So they could access them and then return to their housing situations. But we are proposing, as part of our model in the future, to have housing situations, and it would work like this. Another group that we're attempting to help with the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance are at-risk high school and college students. And by at-risk students, I mean those individuals who are in the alternative learning program, who, in my experience, as someone who might have been considered an at-risk teenager. In my experience, these students are loyal, hardworking, bright, talented, just are not walking in lockstep with the rest of the educational community. And so they're in alternative learning programs. We're going to ask those students to come and support the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance. So as part of their work experience and part of their educational experience, alternative learning programs will bring their students to Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance, and they will support the individuals on the spectrum with the work that they're doing and the developmental stuff. And we'll train them in DIR floor time. They'll be heavily vetted. There'll be nobody who could possibly be a threat. Everybody gets fingerprinted and everybody's well known. So those are not considerations. And those individuals, after working in Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance for a number of years, as we open up housing units, will be individuals who will have access to those housing units along with the consumers of Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance. So the model we're going to use for our housing is really the Camp Hill model from Waldorf Education. The Camp Hill has existed now for, I know, more than 50 years, because I think I was invited to the 50th anniversary celebration of them a few years ago. And they're all over the world. And Camp Hill exists in this way. Ostensibly neurotypical people and people with developmental challenges live together in a community without a hierarchy. So it isn't as if the neurotypical people are taking care of in some way the people with developmental challenges. They're living as equals in the community. And that's the model that we'll be using. And the individuals who are identified by us in the alternative learning programs are the individuals who will be the people who will begin to live in those communities. One of the reasons that that occurred to me to be part of the model is because the individuals that I have encountered through my other professional relationships who are in the foster system, when they hit the end of the foster system, sometimes find themselves homeless, sometimes find themselves with absolutely no support. We have a tremendous junior college in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa Junior College, nationally famous, has been mentioned by some of our national politicians as one of the schools that they want to model the junior college system and the community college system on. There are a tremendous amount of homeless students that attend Santa Rosa Junior College, sleep in their cars, and attend Santa Rosa Junior College. So those are the individuals, these hardworking alternative learning program kids who aren't taking a traditional route, maybe maybe out of the foster system at the other end, who are homeless. Those are the individuals who will be supporting us in our housing, and the individuals who have come through our system will be well trained and ready to go. So that's what our housing model is going to look like. But for right now, starting, once you get into housing, right now in the United States, unfortunately, we're in a period of flux where the mandate has come down that we don't want people congregated in large housing units anymore. That's considered to be exclusion from society. The autistic community is adamant about it. Advocates are adamant about it. People with autism and their advocates. So, I make a differentiation between those two communities because there are people who are really proud of their autistic identity, identify as autistic, are very active and vocal. And there are people who have autism, who use person-first language, and whose advocates may or may not feel the same way that the autistic community feels. So, but that's an idea that has really held sway with our federal government, and our state governments are beginning to enact it. But how it's going to look, we don't know. So housing is in terrible flux here in the United States, and people are really upset. In California, I attended a meeting where some of our regional center directors were talking to the parents of people who were consuming housing, and the parents were not going to live forever. They were screaming. you have to tell us what we can safely do and what housing will be allowed. And they didn't have an answer yet. So we're in flux. But as that sorts out, these smaller community-based living situations where everybody is an equal on the Camp Hill model, I think are an excellent alternative.
That's wonderful. Two more questions before we wrap up here. How can people listening donate if they're so interested in doing so to help this? And secondly, how can they find out, I guess 3 questions. How can they find out if they want their son, daughter, cousin, brother, sister to be a part of this? And third, if they're hearing this and saying, I want to do this in my community, I live in Alabama, I live in Texas, I live in Milton, Ontario, I want to do this, can we talk and figure out what your model is, and how do you're doing this in Sonoma County, but you're only one person, I assume you have a team, how are you going to support people all in different places, or you're just going to train them? Maybe that's a lot of questions, but... Okay.
So you can't give me money, not now, not yet. But you can get more information by going to the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance website. And it is simply dirtyhandsdevelopmentalalliance.org is one word. And it's a terrible, there it is. It's a terrible, it's not an acronym. It's just a terrible web address. But it does say it all. And when our tax status is established here in the United States and we are able to take, that's my son's hands there, and we're able to take charitable contributions, and that'll be available. If you want more information, you can go to the website and you can get on the mailing list, you can get information from us, or you can ask me direct questions. You can also reach me through my other website, which is a developmental website. All of these things link together and reach me. So once you reach me, and let's say you wanted to make you wanted to start a program in your community, we would, this is funny to watch that. There it is. That's my developmental blog, but then my website is also around. But anyways,
I think giltippie.com or something.
Yeah. Once you reach me, we'll help you. So part of our mission was that we wanted to make an easy, available, open source program available anywhere in the world that wanted to do this. And so as we're putting together the program, we're going to make all of the materials available to there's my website. We're going to make all of those materials available to anyone who wants them. And if you were to get in touch with me and say, hey, I want your support and advice, I'll talk to you on the phone. We can get together for a go-to-meeting. We'll do whatever we have to do, and we'll start to support you. In conjunction with the United States Autism Association, we competed for the 100 and Change grant through the MacArthur Foundation in the last round. We were fighting for that $100 million, and we wanted to make it available to people all around the country. We were really pleased that we made it to the next round. We were not surprised that the people who beat us had an international organization. We're solving another problem. But our mission has always been to be of use to others and be open source, nothing at all proprietary, nothing to be bought. We really just want to help people. The way the Dirty Hands logo we're hoping will eventually help people is that when people see it, they'll recognize, oh, here's a group that's supporting people on the autism spectrum and giving back to the community. And so as that begins to pop up at your farmers markets around the country and in Canada or wherever, you can realize, oh, this is that group and they're doing good work and they're trying to support society. So you can't give, but you can get in touch with me and you can get support from us.
Well, this is excellent, and I can't wait to follow the progress of this over the next few years, and I hope our listeners will join the mailing list of the Dirty Hands Developmental Alliance. For those listening to the audio podcast, go to affectautism.com, look up Dirty Hands, look up Gil Tippie, and the blog will pop up. I'm going to put links to everything we discussed, and you can click away and see the beautiful logo that we're showing right now. And I wish you all of the best with this project, Dr. Tippie. I'm so excited for you and excited to watch you go through this next stage.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I mean, it's always such a joy to talk to you, and I look forward to talking to you guys again really soon. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Until next time, here's to affecting autism through play.